Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the new Marvel Legends retro carded Spider-Man, which is maybe, well, I was gonna say it's one of the most interesting, figures I was most excited for this year, and that's not true. I mean, I really was looking forward to this before it came out. Obviously, I can't look forward to it now. The figure this is based on, this whole line of Spider-Man figures back in the day, that was my jam. So this is right up my alley. I'm so pumped for it. Obviously, there's other things I am more interested in than a $20 figure, but this is still something I was very psyched for, and I'm happy to tell you there's a whole lot to talk about. There is a lot of good things, and I'll just put it out there right now. This might be the best Marvel Legends Spider-Man to date. But that does not mean we're going to ignore the problems of this figure. We're going to go at it just like we always do. We're going to talk about the good and the bad so that you know what you're paying your hard-earned money for. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just above 16 centimeters, which makes him pretty close to, let's say, 6 3/8 inches. And there's a lot of new stuff on this guy, and that's good. Kind of. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. Some of it is really good in concept, not so good in practice. We'll go over it. I want to point out though, while this might be the best Spider-Man we have to date, at least mine, and these kind of things are generally fairly universal, this one has the worst webbing paint job out of probably all of the Hasbro Spider-Man figures. His web lines are just janky as heck. Like, look at his shoulder. There's no web shape to him right there. The face, they're not symmetrical. They don't connect to the eyes. Just, if you look all the way around, there's lots of, especially the black line work, which I think is awesome that they did that. The heavier line around the blue to the red. It's just, like, it's missing there. It's missing down here. It's real fuzzy. The webs are just janky almost everywhere. So that's definitely a bummer. Luckily, you don't notice that if you're not looking too close, so it's something you could probably not have to worry about too much, but it is not a clean paint job. And I get that painting webs is hard, but they've done it plenty of times with relative success, so that's definitely a little bit of an issue. I will point out, though, he does have a mostly universal color for the red and the blue. There's nothing that stands out too bad under normal lighting conditions. It's all fairly consistent, so that's a really good thing. Now, here's the other thing that I like about this guy. It has a much more organic look to it than most Marvel Legends figures. His proportioning seems to be a lot better in a lot of ways, and I think that's fantastic. Luckily for Hasbro, the whole skinny, ripped, muscly leg things, that issue that they have going on, works really well for Spider-Man, so that is a good thing for sure. Here, I will say though, the way they've been doing chests on a lot of figures where it sticks out in the middle and then just tucks all the way into the armpit, which is kind of technically anatomically correct, but the way they do it is weird. It's definitely present here. He has a very round chest, and it makes the pecs just kind of sink in over here and looks a little strange. Part of that is the way they do their butterfly. They could definitely adjust it. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for a lot of people, but it is worth noting. The other thing I want to mention, which I think this, well, there's two other things, but one of them is the biggest thing, which I think kind of plagues a lot of Hasbro's figures, and once you pose the figure, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if it didn't exist, it would be better. I want to point out something. If we look at the package here, if we just look up, look at the way his shoulders are oriented near his head. Now, I know he's leaning forward and stuff, but look at where his shoulders are and how big they are. Look at this part over here. Look at the shoulder presence on that little drawing. Superheroes have big shoulders. They don't have to be big bowling ball shoulders, but they have to be relatively large shoulders, and they can't be too low or they look weird. Now, something they've been doing on almost all the Spider-Man figures and a lot of the other figures is making the shoulders fairly small and low, putting them underneath the traps over here. And that does affect the look of the Spider-Man figure. It gives him a very tapered look. He almost looks like he has no shoulders, as people would say. Like if you saw a guy walking down the street, you'd say that guy doesn't have any shoulders. That's kind of what they're doing here. If these shoulders were just up a little bit in line with the traps, it would give him such a better look. So here's what I'll do. I'll Photoshop it for you so you can see. This figure looks fine. It's not like you're gonna not want to buy it because of that issue, but that is something that would easily make this figure look a lot better. And so hopefully by bringing that up, maybe we'll start to see that in the future. You never know. Okay, and then the last thing I want to point out here is the head is kind of lollipop, actually, which is a little bit weird. I wouldn't expect it on this guy. And Spider-Man is allowed to have a longer neck than normal. But the way they've done it, he does have a gap, first of all, but it is just a little bit too high on the neck. Obviously, Spider-Man can get away with it, but it's, with the long neck and the low shoulders, it gives him a pretty relatively weird look, I should say. Again, you probably not gonna be a deal breaker, but it is worth noting his head is too high. If the peg that's in there was a little bit shorter, this would be a lot better. We'll get to the peg itself for the articulation section. Okay, so there it is. That's it for the aesthetic. I do think, obviously, everything I mentioned could be better, except for the good things. But even then, anyway, it's still a really solid looking figure. Probably the best Spider-Man again, but those are issues that should be addressed. So I'm still gonna give it. I'm gonna give it an 8. If you blur your eyes and look at it, it looks fantastic, and I'm not saying that as a joke. Normally I am when I say that, but if you do that, like just look at the screen right now and just blur just a little bit. All of those issues, which are relatively small issues, they just disappear, which means it still looks good. And so I think that's fine. It's kind of like turning it. Well, never mind. We don't need to get into art theories and things like that. Okay, so as far as accessories go, we have the two different heads. We have the normal head, and then we have a head with slightly squintier eyes. Both heads have terrible web paint jobs, and the eyes are painted pretty nice though, so that is pretty good. We do have two sets of hands. We have the thwipping hands that come on them in the package, and then we have some fist hands. We have no wall crawling hands, and that bothers me a lot because they have molds, and they could use those molds for this figure, but they didn't. This is like the ultimate Spider-Man figure from them, yet no wall crawling hands. Maybe we'll get it in a future release, probably. That's it for accessories. No web, no stand, no wall crawling hands. That's fairly basic. It's enough. I'll give it like a 7, I guess, because 2 heads and 2 sets of hands is fine, but definitely could have had a little bit more going on. And I know it's not necessarily accurate to the original figure, but what the heck, we can get some extra accessories. Nobody's going to complain about that. Okay, on to the articulation, which is probably the most interesting point for this figure because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Some stuff that we don't normally see. Some of it good, some of it not so good. The first thing I want to point out, big old ball peg, that's good. Ball pegs should be big. The bigger the ball, the better the peg. No, the better, that sounded way worse than I meant. The better the range of motion, which is awesome. However, they done Hasbro'd it up again. If you look in here, that's a big old hollow neck, and there's a little peg down in there. So when you try to move the big peg, you get very little range. Like you'd probably think, well, that's a lot of range. Well, okay, let's put the head on and see. Let's see how much we can do leaning to the side. You can't really. You're not really getting much of anything. I mean, there's a little bit there, obviously, but most of the range you're getting is on that big, beautiful ball, which is how ball pegs should work. They also did this thing where they cut out the back of the neck to allow for the peg to lean back farther. But notice how far in the body that peg goes. It's preventing it from being able to use that, really. Yes, technically it does fall between the two spots there, so you do get to use that gap, but it still gives you almost no range because the peg's all the way down here by his clavicle. That's not how you do a ball peg, or a double ball peg, which is what this is. So even with that cut, you lean his head back, yeah, you can lean his head up, but look what happens. It dislocates the neck. It gives the lollipop syndrome even more room to look like butts. That's not how you do a ball peg. Let me show you something here. Here's a 3D printed prototype. I'm working on the full-on plastic ones right now from my line that I'm developing. This is how you do a double ball peg. The bigger one, not as necessary. You need one big one at least. 2 big ones is fine, but you can't really do that much on a head anyway. So what I chose to do is to do one big one and one little one, and see how high up that ball is? The center of the ball should be at the point of motion, not all the way down here in the neck where it's not doing anything. This allows for the ball to lean all the way over. You get so much more range when your ball is big and at the point of pivot, or whatever you want to call it. I don't have a head to connect onto it, but you can already see how much extra range there is. Look at that here. We'll take the heads off to be fair. Watch this one. And look at this one. You see the difference? I don't know why they didn't think to do that. Now, really, when you have a double ball peg, we might as well take a moment to go into articulation lesson. Double ball peg, one of the balls is for the main range of motion and one of the balls is for adjustments. That's why you only need a little one and a big one. The big one covers the main range of motion. The little one allows the head to adjust to make it look natural. They did it backwards here, and that's partly why you get such a tiny range of motion there and such a big range on top of the ball. They shouldn't have done it that way. At least, if they're going to sink it all the way down in there, it should have been the other way around. Alright, that's enough talking about articulation for today. Maybe someday we'll do some videos just talking about the engineering of action figures, though I don't know if people would like that. Alright, this is a long-ass video. Alright, on to the butterfly joint. It works very nicely. Look how creamy... I'm gonna go back to using that as a descriptor. Look how creamy that butterfly joint is. So much range, more back than forward, but still, that is pretty good. As for the shoulder, standard ball hinge. If you force it, you can almost get it up horizontal. That's still kind of a bummer. You do get your full rotation, so that's good. But yeah, I wish we could get... Also, you could get this up a lot higher if you didn't have the traps on top of it. If you had the traps next to it, that would work better. So it would look better and work better. Bicep swivel is a swivel. We have giant red pegs. That still blows. Elbows don't give us as much range as I would have thought we'd get on a Spider-Man figure. That's definitely a bummer. I don't know why they opted on this one figure to give us less range. It seems okay. These arms look to be like the Sunfire arms. I figure on Spider-Man they probably could have done a little bit better though. So it's fine, but again, this is like the Spider-Man figure. I was hoping for a little bit more. Wrist swivel and hinge, that's all fine. So here we have a diaphragm joint, which is not something we normally get on Spider-Man or Marvel Legends figures, and diaphragm joints are awesome when they're properly executed. It almost feels like a double ball peg. I haven't taken it apart to look, but it doesn't really matter. You don't get a ton of range out of it though. Let's go from the side. It does go back rather nicely. You get a ton of range going back, but when you go from the neutral position to forward, it's not that much. It's fine, but it's not a lot. Going side to side is definitely satisfactory. That's about what I would expect for a side-to-side joint. And then you do get rotation out of that. So that's a good diaphragm joint. That's pretty nice. For the ab crunch, it's a reverse ab crunch down here at the lower part of the abdomen. And it goes back pretty far. Definitely could have done better with that paint job, but you can bend it back very nicely. Going forward, it bends forward a little bit, and using both joints, that's as much range as you get, which isn't a small amount, but let me grab another figure and show you something. Here's our Daredevil guy, standard ab crunch waist twist. Okay, one joint, boom. Same, almost identical, same range of motion from one ab crunch. And we still get the waist twist so he can lean off to the side if he needed to do like a kick or something. Alright, this guy does not have a waist twist. With an ab crunch, you need the crunch to be connected to a swivel. When you try to lean him off to the side, the best you can do is that. Or that. You cannot lean this Spider-Man figure to the side now because this ab crunch does not have a swivel at the bottom. If you're going to do this combo, this ab crunch needs to be flipped around and give us a waist twist. Or a ball peg. Excuse me. Or a ball peg to go with the ab crunch. Something has to go. You can't do it like this because, yes, this is the most articulated Spider-Man they've done, but he can't do like normal poses. There's nothing to do on the side, which is definitely not good. You can lean him forward and spin him around this way like he's doing calisthenics, but that's not really going to be that helpful. So technically it has the most articulation, but it doesn't have the most usable articulation. This guy has the basic articulation and is much more functional. Do you see? This figure is making me talk a whole lot more technical than I had planned. I hope you guys don't find it boring. I think this stuff's interesting, but hey, you know what? That's what you got. Alright, so here's another really interesting thing about this figure. It has hinged ball pegs for the hips. We don't see that in a lot of Marvel Legends figures as in ever. We kind of saw it in Beast, but not really. This is as close to a Bandai of America or Bandai Japan figure as you're going to get in the hips from Hasbro. So it has the drop down. Let's see how they work without it first. Going out to the side, better than normal Spider-Man range. That's really good. I think anybody would have been satisfied with that. Going forward, that's more than horizontal, so that's good. And then going back, not so much. But if you drop them down, you get to go even a little bit higher forward. And going out to the side, let's see if that makes a difference. Yeah, not really. So going out to the side is not enhanced at all. So you just get a little bit better range out of it this way. that's fine. It doesn't hurt the figure to have that as long as it doesn't get loose or anything. So giving a little bit extra high kick, that is all right. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a problem, so I'm okay with that. That's pretty cool. They're still doing a weird thing with the hips where they just can't bring them all the way out to the side. They could easily rectify that. I don't know why they haven't. Very strange. But still, as far as Hasbro Spider-Man figures go, this is a pretty good one for the hips. Thigh swivel is a thigh swivel. Double jointed knees give you all the range you want. You do have a shin swivel at the top of the boot. The ankles go all the way back. All the way... Hey, maybe not as far forward as I thought. I thought I could force it and make it go, but it really won't go farther than that. That should be enough. That's fine, but for a Spider-Man figure, a little exaggerated range might be an okay thing. You do get a really nice ankle rocker out of it, so there you go. As far as articulation goes, a lot to talk about. Mostly good stuff. Nothing that's actually bad other than the diaphragm ab crunch combo just doesn't work. It never will work as well as doing it properly, which is to have some sort of either a ball peg or a swivel at the bottom, and then an ab crunch or a diaphragm joint. You have to do something there to make this work. This joint, it's just not that practical. You can only do one pose with it, which is lean forward or lean back. Yes, sure, you can mix it to do something with the ball peg, but that's still going to be very limiting as opposed to if there was a swivel or a ball peg here first. Raise this up a little bit. Okay, and then the head is still weird on the neck. So, some really good stuff going on here, some weird / maybe bad stuff. I'm still going to give it like a 7.5 to an 8. The neck is still terrible. No matter how you cut it, that is not a good neck. And then this section is just weird. I can't get around it, so 7.5 to 8 for articulation. Final verdict on this guy, finally, after over 15 minutes of review on a Hasbro Marvel figure. Who would have thunk it? I'm a bit torn. I personally I'm really happy to have this because it reminds me exactly of what it's supposed to, which is great. I love it. I'm definitely going to get one to keep in the package just because these packages are so nostalgic and awesome. But I still do really like the figure. Despite its shortcomings, it's still pretty awesome. But it does have those shortcomings. It's hard to ignore those. I'm going to give it an 8. I think that's a fair review. It's a very nice figure, exceptional in some ways, but the paint problems, the articulation problems, limited accessories, it's just... I mean, it's still an 8. That's a great score. It's just not the 9 or 9.5 I was hoping it would be, and I think that's probably true for most people. So now you have all kinds of information, probably more than you ever thought you'd get on a Hasbro figure, but you have it. So do with that information what you will, and we can talk about it in the comments section below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, and if you haven't subscribed, you probably should. I have new videos out just about every single day, and thousands of videos already on the channel for the days I don't, so make sure you come back for all of that, and in the meantime, keep collecting.